In today's weather forecast, we're going to be doing another look in the overall significant snowstorm that's going to bring in snow all the way from the Midwest to the deep South, as well, bringing in crippling ice situations across Carolinas. And they're going to add like a middle A nor'easter and go up the East Coast and bring in very, very heavy snow, as well, extremely cold temperatures along the eastern corridor for this weekend. So we are watching out for a very significant pattern. Going to be looking at the overall timing, the locations, the impacts, and all of that stuff as well, including the accumulation and all of that good stuff. So if you are under a winter weather alert, I would recommend you guys watch this video because I'm going to really giving you guys a pretty detailed forecast. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the video. So here's the latest look at the National Weather Service, and it does look a lot different compared toward yesterday's video. So like I did predict, these windstorm warnings did expand further into Missouri and further into Illinois. And this snow is currently actually making its way in towards Missouri and Illinois as we speak right now. So it is definitely going to start really pounding across Des Moines. As well, getting closer to Peoria, as well, even Springfield, Illinois is going to start getting some more snow overnight in the next few hours. But windstorm warnings are in place for two regions. One is including the Midwest, and one is including the Southeast Appalachians across the Western Carolinas, and as well far northeast Georgia. And that's where we're seeing some really concerning ice totals, and as well as some pretty very heavy snow. So right now, we do have these warnings across Missouri, Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota, South Dakota, and then of course Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. We also do have winter weather advisories all the way from Minnesota, Wisconsin, all the way up towards, or all the way as far south as portions of Texas and Arkansas. So we are missing, as well as this storm does make its way here by tomorrow morning and tomorrow mid afternoon. It's going to start bringing in, excuse me. It's going to start bringing some really heavy snow, and that's why we do have as well windstorm watches that have now been expanded further east and as well further expanded almost everywhere. So this is now where the windstorm watches are in place. So all the way from western Arkansas up towards portions of Pennsylvania, Ohio, and as well just overall portions in the northeast. So we do have millions under some type of winter threat here. And then we do have, notice how we now have ice storm warnings actually for a portion of South Carolina. This is one of the first ice storm warnings we've had in a while in these areas. So actually ice storm warnings do include a county there in eastern Georgia all the way up towards portions of the west central and central portions there of South Carolina. So we are watching out for a crippling ice situation here. And then we have these windstorm warnings across western North Carolina, north central and northwestern South Carolina, and of course far northeast Georgia. It does include areas like Greenville, Spartanburg, Charlotte is actually under a windstorm warning. And they may even get added into a ice storm warning. There is definitely a possibility, as we do now have some windstorm warnings in Hickory and as well in Asheville and as well even Toccoa and Mountain City, Georgia. So this is the advisories as of now, but let's go ahead and get a look at the latest model runs. So let's now go ahead and start looking at the latest convective models actually. So we're practically now in range for the southeast and as well even the mid Atlantic part for the use the convective models. So we're gonna be seeing a lot of different point of views compared to yesterday. But here's the overall snowfall or the overall snowstorm right now. So there's that really strong high pressure sitting in southern Ontario at 1,041 millibars. And that's exactly why this low pressure is already in Texas, and that is it's actually pretty far south. I'd say a lot sooner than expected. So that can really change the overall impact or the overall effect of this storm when it comes to the southeast here. The southeast is really impacted by the current low pressure location significantly more than the northeast, because the northeast will be joining or actually dealing with its own issue. But here's the low pressure all the way down here in the Texas Panhandle at 1,005 millibars. As it goes through cyclogenesis, it is going to continue to move eastward, and there is that really strong high pressure now at 1,043 millibars. So it is pushing that low pressure really far south, and as well pushing that moisture pretty far south. So there's that really heavy snow going to happen practically overnight. There's that really heavy snow. Continuing across portions of Iowa, Illinois, into even eastern Kansas and eastern Nebraska. And as we continue now into the overnight hours, the low pressure is now going to continue to kind of move east-south-eastward. So now it's actually closer towards the Tyler, Texas area at 1,007 millibars. They're going to be seeing kind of in those areas actually where we have those warmer areas, that's where we're going to be seeing that rain, where that cold front's not going to be really caught up yet. And there's that main snow going to be kind of anywhere north of that freezing line there. That's going to include northern Missouri, western Illinois, as well, even portions there of Iowa, spots of Kansas City may get some snow, as well, even near maybe Miami, Oklahoma, and even probably even the areas near Tulsa may get a few snow flurries. But watch as this low pressure stays pretty far south. So I think the reasoning why we're seeing this huge uptrend, um, I think the reason why we're seeing such a big uptrend with this snowfall for portions of the southeast is because this low pressure staying pretty far south. So that's definitely going to be a pretty big factor. And if the odds do continue to show this low pressure being pretty far south, we're going to be watching out for maybe a pretty uptrend in the snowstorm. But look at this low pressure now, all the way in the Gulf of Mexico now. So that is a massive, massive shift to the south. And there you see that really heavy snow across Arkansas, Texas, and continuing to Louisiana. And now let's actually take a deeper look now that we kind of focus on the other part. But let's not go ahead and look at the overall southeast here and see what's going to be going on over here, because we are going to be watching out for probably there is a chance that snow could start to develop pretty early on because of this low pressure being very, very far south, and that's going to allow for this colder air to really, really push in the southeast Appalachian. That's well, if it is further south, and that cold front will really, really stretch pretty far south as well. But here's look at 6Z already getting some snow developing across northeast Georgia and the Carolinas, and there you see that we're going to be seeing a moment where it's going to become really mainly rain with the very warm temperatures. But as we now continue now into 10Z, look at this huge difference now. We're seeing that main snowfall across northeast Georgia and as well as Carolinas. We actually are going to be seeing, we're going to be starting off pretty cold here. You can be seeing pretty much we are going to be seeing just above freezing temperatures across this area, or actually just at freezing. But we're not going to be seeing any significant warm air advection until really the mid to late morning is when we'll start seeing this this inversion continue. But as we go down to 12Z into the mid morning, there you start to see that really extreme thick layer of ice across the Carolina area, as well even to the southeast portion or southwest portion of the North Carolina, actually no, southeast portion of North Carolina, and there you see that really heavy snow in those areas under the windstorm warnings. And this is not even to the point where the low pressure has gotten even close to Georgia or the Carolinas. The main low pressure is way down there in the Gulf of Mexico, but because of that CAD pushing to the south, we're seeing snow pretty early on. That's why it's going to be a pretty significant storm with significant ice totals and snowfall, because once this low pressure actually now finally arrives, this is where we're going to start seeing some really strong as well for genesis. That's going to really amplify the rising air with this system. But look at this really thick, really thick sleet layer across the western Carolina. I mean, look at this really strong inversion, and the reasoning for this strong inversion is because the steep temperature gradient across the Appalachians and the surrounding areas. And because of that gradient, the atmosphere wants to actually stabilize, so it's going to cause warmer air advection on the colder side where that cold front is. So that's why you see that really steep inversion, and that's exactly why Sunday is going to be a really significant ice threat. And there you see now this low pressure now makes its way now into northeast Georgia. You're going to start seeing the snow now push its way into the Virginias. Very heavy snow now across, very heavy ice now making its way towards Raleigh, Winston-Salem. And then you see that really heavy snow on the backside where we actually finally have colder advection. And that's where you're going to start to see that snow across Georgia and the Carolinas. But watch these seasons start getting some snow as early as Sunday, early afternoon. There's that really thick sleet layer that's going to cover the Washington, D.C. area, or freezing rain area layer. And then, of course, areas to the far northwest where we actually have that cold air are going to be getting some really significant snowfall. So if you're in Pennsylvania, western Maryland, even portion there of eastern, or just in West Virginia in general, you guys are in a really good place. But if you're in New York City or the coastal areas, you guys are not in a good area, because that's where we're going to be seeing that strongest warm air advection, actually. So we just go anywhere near Philadelphia, you're not going to be seeing anything good. 34 degrees with inversion, while near Williamsport, you're going to be seeing 19 degrees with an inversion, but since it's 19, it shouldn't cause that big of a concern. But let's now go ahead and get a look now at the latest HRRR, so another convective model. And let's just say the HRRR really has a really intense play out for the southeast when it comes to snow and ice. So these convective models are actually, I see, a lot more intense than the GFS, and slightly more intense than the Icon. But the European and CMC have actually started to agree with very intense snowfall in the southeast. So it looks like these two European and CMC plus all these convective models are really agreeing. So I think that we are going to see this storm be under forecasted and as well slept on. But here comes that snow across the Iowa area, Illinois overnight. Gonna bring us some snow for the Paducah area, St. Louis area, and there's that low pressure pretty far south and towards the Monroe area, and as well the that general area, the Monroe area, and making its way towards now Jackson. Then it really seems pretty far south, actually now into the Gulf of Mexico. Gonna be seeing some pretty strong divergent on the left exit part of the storm. So there you're gonna start seeing that snow really developing extremely early across the southeast. So let's now get a look at the overall forecast here. I mean, the HFR is really having the snow really begin very, 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 very early. So there you can start to see now we go towards now Sunday early morning. Look at that. Already developing some snow as early as 5Z, 6Z, 7Z, really widespread. Look at 8Z. And notice how it's mainly snow compared towards the -3 kilometer being a little bit more ice. With a little bit more intensive ice. Obviously, eventually by the mid and late morning, the ice will start to become a bigger threat. But there's that really significant snowfall across the Carolinas, across Georgia. So let's go ahead and keep looking at what we're expecting. So again, we're gonna start seeing that really warm layer develop. Those warmer mid levels develop in the mid morning. But we're still going to be starting off probably in the early morning, like 3, 4, 5 a.m. We're going to start seeing some really intense snow as that really cold air starts to really form across portions of really across the Carolinas and the southeast Appalachians. Although maybe slightly above freezing, for example, we go here in Georgia, it's going to be actually 31 degrees. So it looks like the HFR is really having a cold trend. I mean, 31 degrees already by 9Z. But again, you're going to start seeing that really extreme ice developing by the mid-morning here at 14Z. Extremely significant ice across Columbia area, Spartanburg, Clemson, as well, making its way towards as well southeast North Carolina. And then I start seeing that really strong area of really snow across near Charlotte, as well across portions of the Greenville area. And as we continue now, here comes that low pressure finally, and that's once this low pressure does make its way towards the actual southeast Appalachians, this warm air advection is going to continue to increase now to the north and now to Virginia, and then we'll start seeing some now a lot of this rain now converting to snow in Alabama and Georgia, which will give another opportunity for more snowfall. But again, this is where the HFR does stop. But it's definitely very intense for Charlotte now in Winston-Salem, Greensboro. Definitely very intense model run, and it seems that there is some agreement with it, I say the least. Let's now look at now the global models, the GFS. So here's the GFS latest 18Z run. So again, there is this snow moving in overnight into northern Missouri, as well as some pretty significant snowfall, I'd say at least for the Kansas City side, moving into now Illinois. And now this low pressure is going to go towards Arkansas, and as this low pressure does go through cyclogenesis, we're going to start seeing as well very intense snowfall across Missouri and as well Arkansas, and eventually we could very well get dynamic cooling once this actually gets toward the Appalachians. But let's now go ahead and get a look here at the overall forecast for the southeast and the mid-Atlantic on the GFS. So let's go ahead and get a look at that once this ad goes away here. If the X actually pops up. There we go. So let's now go ahead and get a look here at the latest GFS. So here's 9Z already getting that snow, of course, across Carolinas and North Georgia, as well. There is that I'd say the main part of where this low pressure actually is, bringing snow across western Tennessee, and then there you start to see that ice developing across the south central portion of North Carolina. But as we now go towards 12s and eventually 15Z, here comes that low pressure at 997 millibars. So it's actually pretty steep here. So we're going to be seeing some very significant warm noses across these areas under that warm air advection regime. And then I start seeing a lot of that snow to the north, and then really good snow for Alabama, Tennessee, Virginia, and of course the Asheville area, and obviously North Carolina. But here comes the low pressure now, kind of going over just near just to my south. Gonna bring in a lot of snow now. So once that ice is over, a lot of snow will come in the afternoon, bringing in very heavy snow across north central Georgia, the western Carolinas, now into east central Tennessee. As well, going to be seeing some really significant, of course, still going to be seeing that really significant warm air as this low pressure continues to steepen. So it's not looking too good for areas near the metro areas in North Carolina. There's that really significant warm noses across the areas of both, or almost all the big cities in North Carolina. Asheville in there, practically. Charlotte's actually not just actually Charlotte is just outside of that really. Raleigh's in there, Winston-Salem's in there, Greensboro's in there, all those really big cities. But let's look at the northeast portion. So as this low pressure continues to make its way further northward, we are starting to see a pretty significant western trend here. So it is not looking too good if you're anywhere really remotely close to the coast. It's not looking too good whatsoever. So if you're in Baltimore, DC, New York City, Atlantic City, even Richmond, Virginia, you guys are not looking too good. I mean, Richmond may get a few snow showers, and same with DC, but once this low pressure gets closer, it is going to completely get washed away by rain. But there you see by 3Z, really, really intense snowfall across the Great Lakes. So this is actually going to be more of a very far inland nor'easter, so in a way. So it's going to be really affecting inland areas like Pennsylvania. Now, actually, really, 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 I say affecting now the upper Great Lakes. But let's, or the Western Great Lakes at least. But let's now go ahead and get a deeper look at what the GFS wants. So I mean, this is gonna be acting like a clipper in a way, and not really a nor'easter. So that's very interesting. But let's now go ahead and get a look here at now 60. Really intense snow just across the inland areas of the northeast. So Syracuse is going to get very heavy snow. And this low pressure does finally go off the coast once it kind of passes the overall resemblances of that high pressure. And then kind of once that high pressure is far to the southwest as the storm goes, or sorry, southeast, once this low pressure continues to go up the east coast, it'll eventually steer back off the coast, which would favor maybe Boston for some pretty cold, chilly rain. But actually, this going off the coast would really favor areas like coastal Maine, or at least close to coastal Maine. And there's that low pressure going back into 977 millibars. And with this, we're going to be seeing dynamic cooling. There's going to be really, really heavy precipitation, and we could very well see the threat of probably blizzard conditions, if not maybe even blizzard warnings in some cases. But let's now look at the European high resolution model. So there's that snow, there's that low pressure now making its way early now into the southeast. Let's go ahead and get a look at that. Alright, so let's now look at the overall southeast and mid-Atlantic for the European high resolution. The European high resolution, the European in general, has been very consistent and a very, very aggressive approach to this winter storm. For example, they really have this snow developing pretty much pretty early here. Early on. It's actually very similar towards the CMC. Actually, CMC has been really trending towards the European, but there we go. It's actually finally starting to load for us. I'm not sure why that part. There we go. So here's a low pressure at 1,003 millibars down near Mississippi. It is definitely further north compared to the convective models, but it's still getting the job done here with that CAD. So there's that 540 line, and look how it just really dramatically drops really now further into the North Carolina regime. At 6Z, really starting to see that really heavy snow already across North Georgia with some sleet as well. Very heavy snow across the Carolinas, and then you see that main storm there across Tennessee. But you're going to be kind of seeing a hole right here because they're really just going to be between the cold fronts, not going to get anything, which actually is really, really unfortunate. But there is that low pressure now at 1,000 millibars, so it's also a lot weaker, but consider this is a 12Z. So that's kind of when the models were still significantly weaker. But there's that really extreme ice layer across Central Carolinas, crippling snow. And then you see that really heavy snow across Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee. And then eventually make its way into the northeast at 988 millibars here into C. Actually, it's a little bit further east, I say the least. So it actually would favor closer to the coast, and as well would favor Washington, D.C. It would favor Baltimore, as well would even favor northern Delaware more. But there's that really heavy snow now, making its way towards the New England area. Upper, obviously going to bring in a really heavy snow, even across the Ohio area because of how west its track is. So maybe even Cincinnati, maybe even Columbus could get some good action. Maybe even Cleveland, Ohio could get some good action. So it's include the areas pretty far west, considering this is a nor'easter. Typically in a nor'easter like this, you would see just on the coast, or at least majority of the coast. Let's now go ahead and look at the NAN 3 kilometer. And again, we just showed the NAN 3 kilometer for the composite reflectivity, but I want to show you guys the overall threat of this warm nose because of this strong frontogenesis. So this is it. Look at 60. So at 60, we're starting to get that snow already across the Carolinas. But since this low pressure is all the way over here near Mississippi, we're not going to worry about anything. That's exactly why the snow does develop, because although it's above freezing, or at 34, you're not going to have anything that really stop the snow except at the very, very surface. But again, it's really not going to be a big problem. So really, around 12Z now, start to see that really significant ice developing now across the Carolinas. Once this really strong warm air advection moves in, that's going to start seeing, again, you're going to start seeing now these inversions coming into play. And then really by 15Z, here comes this really strong inversions now across eastern Georgia. That's why we're going to start transitioning from snow to freezing rain as you go on with the day instead, really. So that's going to actually allow for now this snow in northeast Georgia and the Carolinas to convert to freezing rain. Same thing, really strong warm air advection. That's exactly the reasoning why. And that's also another reason why we're not going to be seeing anything too interesting for even the northeast coast or mid-Atlantic coast because of that warm air advection. But let's now go ahead and get a look at the overall snowfall totals here. So this is a GFS again. I say the least it actually has been uptrending a little bit for the southeast portion, as well as has been uptrending a little bit more for even the Midwest portion. Now actually has in the forecast possibly a foot near Des Moines as well. Again, going to bring in some significant snow across western Illinois. Could get a few inches. We're going to bring in a lot of snow across Missouri. And even if that's portion of the Ozarks, could get a few inches in those higher elevations across northern Arkansas and southern Missouri, and maybe even a few inches for Little Rock if you're lucky. And it's going to really struggle across Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana. But once it goes towards eastern Tennessee, the Carolinas, and the southeast Appalachian, that's where it's going to start to really thrive with dynamic cooling, with the CAD, with the pressure falls, and as well with the cyclogenesis and strong frontogenesis. But here's the overall forecast. Nashville could get a few inches, maybe up to 5 inches, as well. Even Huntsville has been uptrending a little bit, could get anywhere from 2 to 4 inches. And then even Atlanta could probably get maybe a few inches here. Actually, I think they are under the 2-inch right here. So that would also be pretty interesting. So I think overall models are starting to uptrend with the overall radius and the overall effects here. I'm actually more towards the 3-inch zone, kind of right here. Yeah, I'm kind of towards the 3 inches. And then going to be seeing probably maybe measuring in feet across the higher elevations across North Carolina. Going to be seeing very significant snowfall. But look at that really sharp gradient in that snowfall total. It's going to go from really maybe 8-10 inches to around 1 to 2. That's because again of those first being really low elevations, and then of course that we're not going to be seeing really any cold there. And as we continue in the northeast, look at that very significant snowfall as this low pressure does, of course, continue to go through cyclogenesis and actually even probably even I want to say bomb out, but it's definitely going to strengthen very quickly. But I'm not sure about actually 24 millibars in 24 hours. That's a bit of a stretch, but it's not. It's definitely going to not bomb out, but it's going to still be a pretty significant steepening. But here's the overall snowfall. So notice how it kind of favors the Great Lakes more than the actual, even more than the areas of, for example, typically with the nor'easter this time of the year, you have a ton of snow across this area, but it's actually favoring the far west northeast here, including Erie, Cleveland. So this is a very interesting pattern because of that high pressure actually blocking it, making it go north instead of really northeast. So you could get probably up to 1 to 2 feet across the Great Lakes here. As well as now look at the overall total accumulation on the European high resolution. This one's been pretty consistent with its overall amplification. It's definitely a little bit less intense for Missouri and Iowa and even western Illinois, but still get a few inches, maybe 3 to 5 across Missouri, as well as scatter probably near half a foot or more across the Ozarks and Arkansas. But look at this really amplified snowfall totals for the southeast. You're actually getting me at 8 inches, but look at that, even getting some intense snow nearly a foot south of Nashville, and then getting, of course, probably nearly over a foot across these very high elevations, as well getting probably maybe 7 inches near Greensboro. Winston-Salem could get a few inches. Atlanta getting up to near maybe 2 to 3 inches. Columbus getting up to 7 inches. Cleveland up there near getting up to nearly half a foot. So the European high resolution, the really intense model, but it's not really an outlier anymore. It used to be an outlier, but now it's not really an outlier, which is really interesting. And again, it does take this a little bit to a further eastern approach. So we'll actually bring in some good snow though for DC, maybe 5 inches for DC. And of course, in those highest elevations, you're going to be getting up to probably a foot or so across even New England, even coastal making get a ton of snow. And quickly, we're going to be looking at the overall. We're actually going to skip the RDPS, and we're going to be looking at the NAM 3-kilometer snowfall totals here for this general area. So I'm going to go ahead and get this to hurry up. There we go. So let's go ahead and get that. So let's now look at the overall NAM 3, or this is actually the NAM in general. So this is what the NAM in general wants. So we're going to be seeing, again, the heaviest snowfall, at least from now on, for the next few hours across Iowa and northern Missouri. And those windstorm warnings could get anywhere from 6 to 10 inches. And then, of course, a very high layer across Arkansas and a few spots across Tennessee. But notice how it's a lot less intense and a lot less aggressive for portion of Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, and that general area. So that's why there's a little bit inconsistencies now and there, but it overall looks like a pretty intense storm. But as well, getting that really intense snow, I think the NAM is definitely underplaying at least the Appalachian part, only getting nearly less than a foot for the North Carolina area, but I think we could definitely get over a foot and a half as well. It is getting me around the 2 inches, but as well, far northeast Georgia could get up to probably nearly 10 inches. Again, I think it's definitely underplaying it because it only has parts of West Virginia at 3 inches, and I don't see that whatsoever. I mean, West Virginia is going to get absolutely just hammered by this storm. They're going to definitely get more than 3 inches, and then the whole state is practically going to get hammered, not just the typical northeastern portion of the state. And then again, here's the northeast. Yeah, I think the NAM's really underplaying it because they don't even have an inch for State College. They only have a trace for Washington D.C. They have almost extreme northeast track, and I think this is definitely underplaying it a lot. And then we're looking at the NAM 3 kilometer snowfall totals here, so we can get that to load for us. Let's go ahead and look at the NAM 3 kilometer load while it takes its time. So here's the NAM 3 kilometer, or the NAM 3 kilometer, and consider that it does not get the whole storm. So we're only be looking at this part of the United States. So there again, gonna be seeing in Iowa, Missouri, probably even far northeast of Kansas could get anywhere from 6+ inches. Gonna get very intense snowfall across the higher elevation in the Ozarks. Across Arkansas could get over a foot in some cases, which definitely is pretty aggressive, but it is possible. Again, not gonna be as intense for the Mississippi or Western Tennessee area, so there is some inconsistencies within the Memphis general vicinity as well with the Mississippi River, but huge, really extreme snowfall across the areas in this windstorm warnings and watches across the Appalachian. And it actually does have around 5 inches. It does have a lot of pockets across northeast Georgia and as well across the Carolinas getting over a foot of snow, and there you see the pockets, but I definitely don't understand what's going on over here. I think it is because the NAM 3 kilometers have a pretty extreme east track here compared towards the regular NAM, so it does not favor the far western edge of the Appalachians, like southeast Ohio and that general area, as much as the NAM or the GFS has. But we're going to go ahead and see if we can get this to load for us. There we go. So again, it is taking more of an eastern approach, noticing how we are already having up to nearly a half a foot across State College. And then the last thing we'll be looking at, actually, I think that is the last thing we'll be looking at. But yeah, that is the last thing we'll be looking at, actually, unless we have the HRRR. And actually, I don't think I have the HRRR pulled up, so I'm gonna go ahead and skip this and go to the HRRR. I don't think I have that pulled up. Unless I already went through the HRRR, which I don't think I did. But let's now go ahead and look at the 18Z, which goes 48 hours out. And this is a look at the HRRR, which also is pretty intense for the southeast portion, already getting a ton of snow. And again, it does cut off half the storm. Notice how this part of the storm, the quote-unquote main part of the storm, oops, I don't want to do that. I'm not sure why it's blue. Notice that the main part of the storm has not arrived in the Carolinas yet. So this is a really interesting model, the HRRR. Ever since it's been in the range, it's been very aggressive, already having in some cases nearly 7 inches, 6 inches across northeast Georgia, the Carolinas. But in the so-called main part isn't even here yet, and it already has me at around 5 inches. It already has Metro Atlanta at 3 inches. It's definitely having an extreme trend for northeast Georgia, as well already having almost half a foot or more across Alabama, as well having almost half a foot across Mississippi. And that's why I'm saying it's really inconsistent with these models. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys later.